Today's factoring lesson is going to be on factoring trinomials that have the form x squared plus bx plus c. So these are a lot of fun, so get excited. So before we start factoring our trinomials, the x squared plus bx plus c, we want to think about how do we get trinomials that have that form, x squared plus bx plus c. You guys have actually seen this before in our previous chapter, so let me just remind you how we get trinomials that look like that. You don't need to write this down, but you should be listening. So here's my message for those of you that don't listen when I tell you you need to listen to the videos. So we have a binomial times a binomial. If you guys remember, when we're multiplying binomials, we're going to FOIL this out. So FOIL first, outside, inside, last. We're going to FOIL 4 times and then combine any like terms for our final answer. So first thing we're going to do is multiply the first terms. And again, FOILing is just like distributing, so keep that in mind. We're going to distribute the x, so here's our x times x. That's going to give us x squared. Then we're going to do x times a positive 3, so that's plus 3x. 6 times x plus 6x. And then 6 times 3 is plus 18. So hopefully you guys kind of remember doing that in the last chapter. I think we've had a couple of review questions on some assignments with that. So here's our 4 terms. We're looking for any like terms to combine. So we have these x's in the middle, this 3x plus 6x, and our final answer is x squared plus 9x plus 18. Okay, so what we want to kind of think about here is when you're going to be asked to factor trinomials, you are going to be given this x squared plus 9x plus 18. And what we have to figure out is how to get this answer right here. This is what our factored answer looks like when we factor our trinomials that have the form x squared plus bx plus c. So what we need to think about is, well, we know our answer should look like this. Where did this x squared come from right here? And if we remember, that came from multiplying the x's together. So we can conclude that we're going to have an x here and an x here, because if I were to multiply this out, I can always multiply it out to check my answer. This x times x is going to give me this x squared. Where did this 18 come from on the end? So the 18 came from multiplying the 6 times the 3 right here. So we would ask ourselves, all right, I know that what goes in the second spot of our binomials has to multiply to 18. Well, you have some options for what multiplies to 18. If we think about our factor pairs, it could be 1 and 18, it could be 2 and 9, it could be 6 and 3. So of those options, how do we know which ones it should be? Because all of those multiply to 18. So to figure out the only factor pair that works out, what we do is we say, well, I know that we have to end up with this 9x right here. Like, where did the 9x come from? And if you look straight above, the 9x came from the 3x plus the 6x. So where did the 3x come from? 3 times the x up here. Where did the 6x come from? 6 times that x. So basically, whatever numbers we put right here are going to end up with our x's for multiplying it out, and we know they have to add up to this 9x. So if you look at your factor pairs, 1 and 18, is 1 plus 18 equal to 9x? No. Or just, you can think, is it equal to 9? Is 2 plus 9 equal to 9? No. Is 3 plus 6 equal to 9? And that's the pair that works. So we're going to say x plus 6 and x plus 3. And this is going to be the answer. This is our factored answer. So it's almost like we're foiling backwards, if that makes sense at all. We have to figure out, if we're given the trinomial, how do we get this factored answer? All right, so I know I was kind of babbling a little bit on that last slide. So let's just get into some examples and you can see the pattern of how we factor our trinomials. So we're going to factor this trinomial, x squared plus 12x plus 20. So when we factor trinomials, our answers are going to look like this. We need two binomials that would multiply out to give us x squared plus 12x plus 20. So here's the thinking that we do. We know that what goes in the first spot right here, so the f of our FOIL has to multiply to x squared. So what multiplies to x squared? X times x. And we know that what goes in our last spot right here, the L of FOIL, has to multiply to a positive 20. So you have options. What multiplies to positive 20? So think about your factor pairs. 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. So how do we know which factor pair it's going to be? That's where we have to make sure that the outside and the inside terms of foiling will add up to give us a 12x. So of those factor pairs, do any of those add up to 12? 1 plus 20 is 21, 4 plus 5 is 9, but 2 plus 10 is 12. So we're going to say plus 2 and plus 10. One thing I want to point out is, let's say you had factored this and you wrote, you wrote the x plus 10 first and the x plus 2 second. Those are the same answers because when we factor the trinomial, our factored answer is two binomials multiplied together. Multiplication is commutative, so the order doesn't matter as long as you have the positive 2 and the positive 10. Here's what you're going to do to show me that you have thought through your answer and that this is correct. You are going to, this is our little check that we're going to do. You're going to say, so first of all, we know that the x times the x gives you the x squared, right? We know that the 10 times the 2 gives you the plus 20. So how are we getting that 12 in the middle? So you're going to say, all right, I know that x times 2 is 2x, and I know that 10 times x is 10x, and 2x plus 10x is that 12x. So that's how you're going to show that you checked right here. And I'll show you that again on the next page. All right, so we're going to factor a couple more trinomials. These do get a lot easier once we get the hang of it. But if this is your first time seeing it, it might take a few times to kind of get it, and that's okay. So when we're factoring a trinomial, x squared plus bx plus c, we're looking for our two binomials that would multiply together to give us that. Again, how do we get the x squared? That's going to be the x times the x. That's our f of foiling. How do we get this negative 24? So that's going to go this spot and this spot. So what we want to think about are factors of negative 24. Well, our factors of 24, and I'll talk about the negative in a second, we have 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. And we want a factor pair that's going to add up to give us a positive 2. So when you're trying to find factors of a negative number, I'm going to give you a little hint. When you multiply two factors together to get a negative 24, you need one positive and one negative number. So how do you know if, for example, it should be a positive 1 or a negative 1? How do you know if it should be a positive 24 or a negative 24? Just a quick way to get there, whatever your b value is, what they have to add up to, the bigger factor is going to have that same sign. So the way that we write our factor pairs kind of helps us out. You can see that we have all the small factors on the left and all the big factors on the right. So all the big factors have to match this sign of positive 2. So we need positive big factors, which means all of our small factors will be negative. And that's just going to get us there a little bit faster. Now we're going to add all these together and see which ones give us that positive 2x. So negative 1 plus 24 is 23, so that doesn't work. Negative 2 plus 10 or 12 is 10, that doesn't work. Negative 3 plus 8 is 5. Negative 4 plus 6 is a positive 2. So we are going to have a negative 4 and a positive 6. And here's what you're just going to show me as part of your work. You're going to say, okay, I know that this is 6x and this is negative 4x. And in your head, you're adding that together. Is 6x plus a negative 4x equal to that 2x in the middle? It is. So we know that we got our answer. All right. X squared minus 6x minus 27. So this is factoring a trinomial. Or x squared plus bx plus c. So we know we're looking for two binomials that will multiply to give us that. X times x is how we're getting the x squared. And then the numbers that we're going to put in have to multiply to give us a negative 27. So let's think about those factors of negative 27. We have 1 and 27, 3 and 9, and I think that's it. So because we have to multiply to a negative 27, we need a negative factor in each pair. So remember, the bigger factors right here are going to match the sign of your b value right up here. Our b value is negative, so we need negatives on our bigger factors. All right, one of those pairs should add up to the negative 6. It's going to be the 3 and negative 9. Because it's a positive 3, we'll say x plus 3. And then a negative 9 is x minus 9. So there's our answer, but just to show that we're double checking in our head that that's actually it, remember this last step, we're going to say, I know that x times negative 9 is negative 9x, and I know that 3 times x is 3x. And then what you're doing in your head is you're saying negative 9x plus 3x, is that this negative 6x? And if it is, then we're good to go. We have our answer. All right, we have some rules for factoring that I kind of mention every time we factor, and so in all my other examples you'll hear more about this. But it just has to do with the signs. Like, how do you know if you have positive or negative factors? How do you know which one should be positive and which one should be negative? And it kind of depends on your c value and your b value. So just a general, well, these are the rules, but we'll address these with some examples as well. But just so you know, if your c value is positive, remember we find our c value as x squared plus bx plus c. So that's our c value. And we were always finding factors of c. Well, if that's positive, then that means you can have all positive factors or all negative factors. So how do you know if the factor should be all positive or all negative? Well, that depends on what they should add up to, your b value. So if c is positive and b is positive, then both factors are positive. If c is positive but b is negative, then both factors are negative. Again, this will make sense with some examples, but we'll just go through it right now. Now, if your c value is negative, that's what we just had on the last slide where we had listing factors of a negative number. That means you have one positive and one negative factor. So if your c value is negative, what is your b value? If your b value is positive, then the larger factor will be positive. If c is negative and b is negative, then the larger factor will be negative. All right, two last examples here in the intro video. I'm guessing this is getting kind of long, so sorry about that. But that's okay, because we love math. Right? Of course. Okay, so factor each trinomial. This is the x squared plus bx plus c. So when you factor trinomials, we're trying to find what two binomials multiply to give us that. The x times the x is how we're getting the x squared. And then what is going to multiply to give us 32? So we think about our factors of 32. We have 1 and 32, 2 and 16, 4 and 8. and we're trying to find a factor pair that's going to add up to 12. Now let's talk about those rules for the signs for a minute. So 32 is positive, so that means, how do we get a positive answer when we multiply? Positive 1 times positive 32 is 32. So all your factors are positive, or they could all be negative. If I had a negative 1 and a negative 32, that would still give us a positive 32. So how do you know if you want positive factors or negative factors? That depends on what the b value is. Because the b value is also positive, that means that these have to add up to a positive number, so we just want positive factors. So which ones do we want? Or which ones are going to add up to that 12? Hopefully you guys are already saying, oh, that's going to be a positive 4 and a positive 8. So there's our answer, but remember, you guys are going to show me a little check. It's just you communicating, yes, I thought through this, I know this is the right answer. You're going to say, because we have to make sure that we really pick the numbers that will give us the 12x. So you'll say, all right, x times 8 is 8x. Ooh. And 4 times x is 4x. And in your head, you're saying, is 8x plus 4x equal to that 12x? And yes, it is, so check. We're done. We got the right answer. All right, last one here, we have a trinomial, x squared plus bx plus c. So we are trying to find the binomials that will multiply to give us that. Have you caught on to what's going in the first spot? X times x is how we're getting the x squared. Now we have to figure out how to get that negative 36. So that's a negative c value, so we're going to be able to talk about the signs on this one. First, let's go ahead and list our factors of negative 36. Well, I'm going to list them of 36, and I'll talk about the negatives in a second. So 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, and 6 and 6. So this one has a lot of factor pairs. Because they're multiplying to a negative 36, that means that in each factor pair you need one negative number. So what's going to be negative? Is it going to be the small factors that are negative, or is it going to be the big factors that are negative? And that all depends on your b value. Your b value is negative, so the factoring rules with the signs, your larger factors have to match the sign of your b value. So because your b value is negative, I'm going to make all the larger factors negative. Again, once you get used to those rules, it just gets you to the answer so much faster. So it's a way for us to be efficient once we have those rules down. All right, so of those, do any of these add up to a negative 9? We can go through, cross off the ones that don't work. We'll get to 3 and negative 12. So that's our magic factor pair, a positive 3 and a negative 12. And you're going to check your answer by showing me that, yes, I thought through, and I know that we're getting to that negative 9. So x times negative 12 is negative 12x, and 3 times x is 3x. Is negative 12x plus 3x 9x? It is, so we got the right answer.